A rather entertaining story about an incident that occurred that unfolded just before Christmas. A group of Russian diplomats managed to breach security within the UK Parliament, entering a restricted area of the House of Lords. And while no apparent harm was done, the event has raised serious questions about parliamentary security, foreign diplomacy, and what might have been an attempt to score a symbolic victory for Moscow. The breach took place during a public tour of the parliamentary estate, and a small group of Russian officials, banned from parliament since 2022 in response to Putin's invasion of Ukraine, separated from their tour group and entered an out-of-bounds section of the Lords. They were swiftly ejected by security, but their mere presence in a restricted area left alarm bells ringing. And the motivation, according to parliamentary sources, the goal may have been as petty as impressing the Kremlin with claims of infiltrating one of democracy's oldest institutions. But even if it was symbolic, the attempt was audacious, given the explicit bans and the heightened security around Russian activities. And the incident follows a broader pattern of Russian hostility and espionage activities targeting the UK. From Centre 18's long-standing cyber attacks on politicians to the 2018 hack of the Institute of Statecraft, it's clear that Moscow is no stranger to covert operations. In 2023, warnings of cyber attacks capable of plunging millions into darkness underscored the ongoing threat, and the Speaker of the Commons and Lords, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, and Lord McFall wasted no time issuing a stern reminder. Russian diplomats and officials remain persona non grata. Members of both houses received explicit warnings not to invite Russian representatives, even in private capacity. While the breach ended without damage, it highlights vulnerabilities within the parliamentary security system. How did these diplomats manage to separate from their group and access a restricted area unnoticed? And was this simply a case of opportunism, or did it reflect a larger failure in oversight? The answers are elusive. But the incident raises uncomfortable questions about how prepared Parliament is to deal with potential threats from hostile states. It also forces us to confront the possibility that this stunt was less about espionage and more about embarrassment. A photograph, a story, or even a rumour of infiltration could serve as propaganda fodder for the Kremlin. For a regime adept at leveraging symbolic gestures, even this minor breach could be spun into something far more impactful. And this episode sits against a backdrop of increasing tension between Russia and the West. Keir Starmer, during his visit yesterday to Kyiv, emphasised the UK's commitment to Ukraine, even as Putin's aggression continues unabated. And the Kremlin may have sought to undermine British resolve or create distractions in domestic politics with this ill-timed escapade, and it follows the high-profile case of Christopher Cash accused of espionage for China. Parliament, it seems, is becoming a target-rich environment for foreign powers, forcing a rethink of security. The symbolism of an ancient democratic institution targeted by modern espionage and diplomatic mischief cannot be ignored. One cannot help but wonder, was this an isolated incident, or does it signal a larger coordinated effort? Could these diplomats have been probing for weaknesses, testing responses, or even scouting for future actions? Perhaps it was an opportunistic act of braggadocio. But in international relations, even small acts carry weight, and the breach by Russian diplomats is far more than just a security lapse. It's a microcosm of the larger global chess game being played out by Russia and the West. As Russia actually announces in its newspapers that it wants to revive the USSR, and that this could happen within the next year. And that any negotiations between Russia and the West should be with serious partners like the US and not with London or Brussels. It's specific. It's quite specific. And as tensions mount, incidents like these remind us of the stakes involved and the need for vigilance. Parliament, as a symbol of British democracy, must remain an impenetrable fortress, not just for those inside, but for the ideas it represents. Parliament is a palace, but also a guardian of our standards, and it's a symbol of our resilience.